We recognize these figures instantly: the suave super spy, the masked phantom of the opera, and the massive bipedal beast of the woods. These characters occupy a specific space in our culture. We categorize them as pure entertainment, products of creative minds designed to fill movie theaters and sell paperbacks. However, history has a way of leaking into our stories. When an event is too tragic, too bizarre, or too classified for the public to process, it often survives by masquerading as a myth. To see the truth, we have to look past the fiction. By reverse engineering 3 of our most famous legends, we can expose the startling, real-world events that actually birthed them. The Phantom of the Opera is defined by 2 things: a mysterious masked man lurking in the shadows, and a massive glass chandelier crashing into a crowded theater. This specific disaster has a historical anchor. In May of 1896, during a performance at the Palais Garnier in Paris, a counterweight snapped and sent a massive chandelier plummeting into the audience. It killed a patron instantly. While the police called it a freak accident, the theater's history suggests something darker. 20 years earlier, a pianist named Ernest was caught in a fire at a nearby theater. He ran through the flames to escape, leaving him with severe facial burns, but his fiancée, a ballerina, died in the blaze. Racked with grief and disfigured by the fire, Ernest supposedly retreated to the dark, unfinished basement of the Palais Garnier. Construction workers reported hearing a man playing the piano at all hours, crying out in agony as he tried to finish a wedding march for his dead fiancée. A journalist named Gaston Leroux investigated these rumors and the history of the burned man in the basement. He took the details of Ernest's tragic life and repackaged them as a Gothic romance novel. The Phantom grew out of the isolation and grief of a real person. Ernest was a survivor, whose trauma was eventually buried under the weight of a famous Hollywood myth. Today, James Bond represents a glossy world of high-tech gadgets and consequence-free espionage. He is the ultimate cinematic fantasy of what it means to be a spy. But the character's roots go back to the smoke-filled chaos of 1939. Inside Room 39 of the British Old Admiralty Building, naval intelligence was frantically inventing creative ways to deceive the German military. The director's personal assistant, an officer with the code name 17F, specialized in these deceptions. He didn't have field training, but he spent his days pitching outlandish schemes, like dropping soccer balls into the ocean to trick enemy submarines. His most successful plot, Operation Mincemeat, involved dropping a corpse off the coast of Spain. The body was dressed as a British officer and carried fake documents claiming the Allies would invade Greece and Sardinia. It was a massive lie designed to pull German troops away from the actual target, the island of Sicily. The deception worked. The Allies took Sicily with far less resistance than expected, marking a major turning point in the war. After the war, Agent 17F turned these classified experiences into fiction. He wrote his first book in 1953 under his real name, Ian Fleming. James Bond became the public face for the high-stakes, real-world work conducted by Fleming and his colleagues in Room 39. In modern culture, Bigfoot is often treated as a joke, a silly campfire story, or a blurry image at the center of an internet hoax. But we can trace this legend back to a much darker environment. In the 1830s, the Bitterroot Mountains of Montana were a brutal, isolated frontier where survival was never guaranteed. Trappers Smith and Bowman reported arriving at a remote pond only to find their camp destroyed. Smith later discovered tracks in a clearing, massive paw prints with claws, but they were left by a creature walking upright on 2 legs. The encounter ended in violence. Bowman eventually found Smith's body ripped apart in a way that defied known animal behavior. The victim hadn't been eaten. He had been treated like a toy, surgically torn to shreds by something with immense strength. Bowman kept the details of this goblin beast quiet for years, only sharing them decades later with an author who was chronicling wilderness exploration. That author, who took the trapper's account seriously enough to publish it in 1893, was a dedicated hunter and future leader of the country, Theodore Roosevelt. The Bigfoot legend traces its roots back to these grim 19th century accounts, unexplained frontier horrors that left a mark even on a future president. When we peel back the layers of our most popular characters, the fiction begins to dissolve. These legends are actually echoes of our past. Stories morph over time. Details are added or stripped away until the original event is barely recognizable, allowing us to keep the story alive without having to confront the full weight of the truth. A disfigured burn victim becomes a gothic romance. A world-shaping intelligence operation becomes a suave adventure, and a violent, unsolved frontier encounter becomes a campfire mystery. Fiction serves as a preservation chamber for the most unbelievable parts of our history. It is the only way we can safely carry the truth with us into the future.